What's up, guys? This is episode 32 of the MasterofNonePodcast, and we're coming off a pretty good day, pretty good weekend. Just won the Georgia State Championship. This is my third time winning this tournament. It feels pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. I got home and I danced a little bit yesterday. Like, you ever be so happy that you just have to dance? It's the only time I can dance without, like, drinking anything or doing anything else. Like, post-tournament victory, like, when you win, that's gotta be one of the best feelings. Everyone's so happy, or at least, like, I'm so happy. And whenever, like, you talk to other winners at tournaments, like, everyone's in the best mood ever. It's like, we just want to talk. We're just like, dude, I'm just happy to be alive. So these are the highs of chess. A couple of weeks ago, or about a month ago, I experienced the lows of chess off of one of the worst tournaments, and it's good to pretty much get back what I lost over that one tournament. I'm going to go through the tournament, but before I do that, let me talk about the worst day ever before the tournament even began. So Thursday was a really, really tough day. So I go jogging, and I'd like to run every day, and there's this pregnant lady, and I swerve to not hit her, and then I trip and fall. And I fall on my knees and my phone. And my knees, okay, they're a little bruised up, no problem. But my phone didn't make it. My phone, the worst part about this phone was only 1/4 of the phone was broken, but it was the fourth that you needed to use to send messages, to scroll things, to do a bunch of things. So Thursday I was pretty much without a phone, and what I do after this is I go to get Cookout, because I'm like, all right, I'm feeling kind of bad, let me get some food. And I go to Cookout, I get my order, blah, 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 I come back, and then I realize 2 hours later that I don't have my debit card. And the reason I realize I don't have my debit card is I get a notification that my debit card is being used at the sex shop for about $150. And they declined the charge, thank God. But these guys, they got my debit card and they went straight to the sex shop after their shift at Cookout. So Friday, I have no card. I fixed my phone. I don't have a card, so it's not, you can't really pay for the phone. Fortunately, while they were fixing the phone, I went to the bank. I got a new card, and using an old card that I have. So whenever I have debit cards, like, I always try to have two, an old one and a new one. But the problem was, since the new one got stolen, the old one I couldn't use, but I could use it to withdraw cash. So luckily, I could withdraw enough cash to pay to fix my phone. And this is going into the day before the tournament. This is actually fixing the phone, and having no debit card was the day of the tournament. So what a way to start, right? So then the tournament begins. Now let me talk about preparation for the tournament, especially the week before. I did kind of go through some openings, go through some lines, none of which I end up getting. Actually, one of them I did, but I'll get into that. But the big preparation that I did was I worked out every day. I read the Bible every day. I read chess books every day, and I ran every day. So as far as, like, mental condition and physical condition, I was really riding high into this tournament, just very on top of everything. So that was my preparation. So now we go into the tournament, and obviously the tournament went very well. One thing to just throw in is, ever since this tournament in Texas that went really, really bad, is in the last 10 games, I've gone undefeated. I think I've had 4 draws and 6 wins, which, I mean, is pretty good. I'm going to say, like, it feels good not to lose. Like, it's been about 2 months since I lost a game of chess over the board, and that's a pretty good feeling. Now, going into this tournament, or, like, really this tournament, I think my mental edge is what really kind of pushed me through. Now, of course, there's a lot of other things that go on, but I want to break down something that I kind of talked about or alluded to in the last podcast about player archetypes. So I'm going to go through my 5 rounds, not really go through the game so much, but go through just kind of the mental side of playing these guys. So round 1, playing an older gentleman, probably in his 50s, I'd say. He was about 2,000. And just right off the bat, I could tell that he was nervous. Like, he was very tentative. Like, move 2, he was already taking 5-6 minutes. And dude, if you don't know what you're playing, or if you're playing very nervous and very slow and scared the first 2-3 moves, that's going to give me a lot of information. And also on top of that, I didn't really know what openings he played. I didn't prepare for this guy, but he played d4, knight f3, g3, which is pretty much the safest kind of setup. It avoids benkos, avoids nimzos, avoids pretty much all the kind of fire variations. Even King's Indian, he's playing it very anti-aggressive. So here, my thought process and what I'm thinking in my head is I want to make this game longer, because I know with his cautiousness and how tentative is, he's gonna get in time pressure. And two, I want to give him a lot of decisions, because I mean, nervous people, if you give them a lot of decisions, it's gonna really bog them down. Unfortunately, like I couldn't really get a super big attack because he played so cautious, but I could keep the position dynamic with a lot of things going on. And basically, eventually, he kind of cracked. I think he played overall pretty well. And then at some point, he got down to like maybe like 5 minutes in the first 20 moves, and I just had pressure. And at some point, he hung up on. And something cool about this game was actually not even the day before, I had a lesson at 5 o'clock with one of my like very very sharp and promising students, Arjun, and we were looking at a Rosalimo. And I basically, the idea was I got the bishop pair, but the bishop pair was not good. The knights were actually stronger than the bishop pair, and it's very like crazy how soon this happens. But in this game, I basically had the knight pair versus the bishop pair, but these knights were dominating. I got all the outposts, and then eventually I basically took it down to an endgame. Like he was panic trading after he got down a pawn, but the problem was, one, my endgames are a lot better. My Jiu Jitsu is a lot better, as I will explain a bit later. And once I got an advantageous endgame, it was very easy for me to kind of just push forward and find the way to finish off the game. So that was round one. Round two, I played a very solid player who's very down to trade queens. I actually got my preparation in this game. I got exactly what I had expected. And basically, I get to this position that's about 0.8, 0.9, almost +1. And the problem was, in my preparation, I kind of stopped at like having this opening advantage. But the position is actually very annoying, or I mean not annoying, but there's some things that you got to watch out for. So practically, I wasn't ready, even though preparation-wise and mentally, I would say I was ready. I should have done some more work on what to do here. Now, also, the way I thought he was going to play it, I thought he was going to play more solid, but he played it more like solidly aggressive, where he could counter me if I played the wrong moves, but also in a way that I could really open him up, but I wasn't sure if it worked. So I was kind of tentative in this position, or in this game, and eventually, like he gets his queen trade, we get this endgame. But once again, like I said, my jiu-jitsu is a lot better. My endgame play, my more positional play, and I had some opportunities to press in this endgame, and I think I fumbled it a little bit. I missed this one idea where once again he can trade off more pieces, and then I actually get a slightly disadvantageous endgame, and that's where he offered to draw, and I was like, I mean, I can try to play on, but chances are he's the one probably pressing. And after I analyzed the game later, I was actually correct. Like the eval was like -0.2, -0.3, and he was the one who's pretty much gonna have fun. And after he offered to draw, I was like, all right, fine, we'll take this. We'll go on to the next one. Now this is round 2, so it is very early to draw. And with these 5-round tournaments, if you score less than 4.5, if you score 4 out of 5, there's no way you're gonna win clear first place. So I have to keep this in my mind that after this draw, I pretty much have to win out if I want to have a chance at winning this tournament outright. Now, fortunately, that did come to pass. So round 3, I play a talented kid. This kid in Georgia, very up and coming, trains a lot, plays a lot. But for him, and funny story about this, like so started things off, move 1, I play f4 against him. So I've never played f4 before, and I know he probably hasn't seen it. And every game I play against him, I've won a bunch of games against this guy, and I've really kind of confused him in the opening. There's another kid like this, Eric Chiang Lu, who once again, just somehow, some way, I always get the right opening choices against them, and I think I just read them really well. And okay, so some logic and reasoning behind why I play like this against this guy. So this guy plays e4, e5. He plays d4, d5, e6. He plays very classical chess, very positional, sound, solid chess. And I want to kind of get it more jumping, more exciting chess. And that's where he's going to be more out of his comfort zone and more confused. And with f4, I think that was a great practical decision. And the inspiration for f4 was last tournament in Florida 2 weeks ago, I played this guy and he played f4, and I saw it was like it was pretty dynamic. It was a very interesting game. Like I never thought that white was like ever just cracked, and that I used this kind of as inspiration for this game. On top of that, f4 can always transpose to a reverse Dutch. So since I play the Dutch or the Stonewall Dutch, like I can always fall back on this worst case if something happens. Now, I'm not going to talk to you guys about the whole game, but he's known for playing these structures of e6, d5, and in the game he played g6. So he rarely fianchettos. So once he fianchettoed, I knew he was kind of out of his comfort zone because it's not something that he's used to. And basically the position got weird. I think I could have played it better because I thought he was playing some inaccuracies, but I never really found a way to punish him immediately. But once again, Jiu Jitsu is good. Once we got to the end game, I was a pawn up. I had once again, I had a good knight versus a bad bishop. Like this tournament was really for the knights, albeit the last round. So I get this better end game, and then eventually he kind of just falls over. And funny thing is, after the game, I talked to his dad, and I talked to his dad the next day, and his dad was like, he was so pissed. He was like, why against everyone else does he play all these normal openings, but against me he plays all this different stuff? It's not fair. And I think I'm going to tell him, because I really root for these kids. I want them, especially since we're in Georgia, I want them to be grandmasters. I want the state of Georgia to be better and to really to be known for its chess. So I'm going to explain to him, like, the reason I play these offbeat openings against you is you play this classical style that I kind of want to avoid. And I know that if I play c4, f4, g3, b3, that's going to kind of get you into deeper waters where I can take advantage of the position. All right, so that's round 3. Now round 4, I play a friend of mine and a training partner, this guy Richard Francisco, who's a very, very sharp player, and he plays c4 mainly. And he told me maybe a year back that he loves playing the exchange French. So I knew he was going to do it because he played e4 move 1, but I was like, how bad could it be? And also, this guy is a very aggressive player. So I was thinking, okay, if I take him to an endgame, if I just kind of play slow, he'll try to do something, try to do too much, and then I can kind of make something happen. And this is unfortunately the opposite of what happened. I played the exchange French. I tried to make it interesting for me, and it ended up becoming very interesting for him. And basically, 10 moves in, I'm down. I've spent like an hour, 45 minutes. He spent like 10 minutes. He has the dream position that he's looking for. He has all active pieces. He played one weird move, king d1, but once he gives up the right of castling, now my king is in huge trouble, and my king gets stuck for a long time. Now, the psychology here is I know he's a very aggressive player, but if I can outlast him, if I can survive this storm, I know he's going to get a little impatient and try to make something happen, and that's exactly what happened. I, honest to God, played very, very good defense. Like, I'm not known for my defense, but I think I've come a long way these couple of years, and since this first state championship, I played honestly exceptional defense, waited, he sacked a piece, had initiative too. It wasn't like he just sacked a piece that was bad. It was still very dangerous, but I waited, and then I hit him with a beautiful counterstrike where he still has some initiative, but now I defend, and I have serious initiative, where he has a lot of things that he has to worry about. And then 5-6 moves later, I defend everything, and now he's the one who's getting checkmated. So round 4, I went ahead and kind of just like mentally survived, and then found my way, waited for my spot, and then made the most of this opportunity. And then last round, the situation going to the tournament or going into the final round is there are 3 people with 3.5, and I think there's 4 people maybe with 3. So I'm playing one of the 3.5s. So if I draw, the other guy, the 3.5, he could actually win and pass me. So this makes drawing for me very something I just don't want to do, because I don't want to take this risk of not winning the tournament. But this kid, honestly, another very talented kid, a lot of potential. I want to see him make GM as well. He really, really wanted to draw. Before the game, he offered a draw. Move 1, he offered a draw. Move 3, he offered a draw. And if it was some kid I didn't know, I would be kind of angry or like, hey, you can't do that, stop offering so many draws. But he's this nice kid, and I know he was nervous, he was scared, so I kind of just laughed it off. And then he plays the Petrov, which he normally doesn't play. So already here, I know he's playing very, very, very cautious, very soft, very like, I want to make sure nothing happens. Like basically, with the moves he's making, he's like, I want a draw. And somewhere around move 10, 12, 13, he offers me his final draw. He says, okay, this is the last draw. I offer a draw, and then makes his move. So here, and I'm not going to lie, like I definitely considered taking the draw a couple of times. I looked to the board to my right, the one where I needed one guy to not win, and I thought he was doing pretty well, so I didn't want to take this chance. And also, like, I don't want to split prizes. Like, I want to win first place. I wanted it to be outright. Now, back in the day, maybe a year ago, maybe just when I'm not in form, when I'm kind of more depressed than optimistic, I would take this draw, take the guaranteed EV of, okay, worst case I get second, best case I get first. It's gonna be a tie. But I was like, no, I gotta play. And what also didn't help his cause was it was a position where I couldn't really lose, and I could just keep playing. I got the bishop pair. I kind of stacked the box against the king, and I was waiting for a moment for him to kind of slip up. And then eventually he plays on the queen side, I play on the king side. I castle king side, and I go g4, g5. I push all my pawns, and he misses this. I'm not even going to say beautiful tactic, just very sneaky tactic, where it almost looks like he is about to survive. He's about to make it through the storm, and he's going to be okay. And then just the coordination of his pieces, he can't do anything, and I end up winning his queen for a rook. And now there's one last kind of spot after this where I think I made a very important decision. His queen versus rook, it could have been a fortress, but instead of just settling for playing against this and trying to play 30 moves, I find a way to make a pass pawn. I sacrifice a pawn and make a pass pawn. And after that, queen bishop and pass pawn versus rook, bishop, and king, and then it kind of is just lights out. And that is how I went ahead and won the 2023 Georgia State Championship, third time winning. So very excited. Just been a lot of like nice people the last 2 days. Everyone's saying congratulations. Like, one cool thing about winning is everyone I pretty much talk to the next week or 2 weeks, the first thing they're going to say to me is congratulations, you won, which is always a very nice way to start off, very nice way. And then we'll keep going into what happens next. Now, I think, so to really summarize, I think what kind of helped me win this tournament, it wasn't that I played openings super well. It wasn't that I really checkmated my opponent. I really think practically, mentally, that was really, and psychologically, those are my biggest three strengths. I think I had a good read on my opponents on what they were kind of going for and what they would be good in and what they would be bad in, even though I did make some mistakes here and there. And I wasn't ready to give up. I wasn't ready to just fold if there's an attack coming my way, to take the draw because it's the easy way out. I sat down, I buckled up, and I was like, I'm going to play. And if you think about it, just like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I had no phone, I had no debit card. Like, it really was shaping up to be potentially one of the worst weekends of my life. But that's why we play this game. That's why we do this, because we can power through. We can prove to ourselves, we can earn to ourselves, like, hey, I'm a different person. I was built different. This is what I do. This is what I'm here for. And I want to be Grandmaster. And I think that's a good way to segue into that. I think by the end of the summer, I'm going to have about 10 tournaments. My goal is to be Grandmaster. I've been putting this off long enough. I've been kind of, I wouldn't say lukewarm approaching it, but I think I could give this 10, 20 times more than I am right now. And it's not that I'm not doing enough or I'm not doing much, but I think if I buckle down, if I make this my number one focus for the next 6-7 months, I think this has a very big shot of happening. Now, kind of what I was talking about for jiu-jitsu and striking when I'm comparing to chess, when I was younger, maybe 5, 6, 10 years ago, I was a pure striker. If I didn't win by checkmate, I pretty much lost every game. And over the years, and almost like coincidentally, as I started doing jiu-jitsu, like I learned that sometimes it's good to flow. Sometimes it's good, like, if your opponent has a weakness in the end game, if your opponent is an all-out attacker, don't go into his wheelhouse. Go to where you are stronger. Go to where you have a good chance to win this game, this match. And I think just as we get older, that is our biggest strength. To all the older chess players out there, like I know we complain about the kids are good, the kids are sharp, the kids are they're really something. But I think what we have that they don't is we have life experience, and we have a better understanding of the world and how people work. And we need to leverage that. And that is really how I beat both those kids. The first one, just out of the opening, I had him rattled, and he kind of just played uninterested the rest of the game, and the other one, I didn't give in to his draws, and as that happened, as I didn't give in to his draws, he kind of faded and started going the wrong direction. And another very interesting thing is after I won the game, there was two kids next to me, right? And one of them was the kid I had beaten, and I actually needed the kid I beat to not lose. So he actually ended up winning his game, and I almost think I sent a message by not losing or by not drawing and winning my game. Once that happened, it's almost like the guy who needed to win to tie, it sucked the life out of him, because now it put way more pressure. If I had drawn my game, he could play with like, okay, worst case, if I draw, no problem. If I win, I get first place. But the second I won, it almost like I could see it in the game. The guy was like, damn, now I can't draw. If I draw, I get nothing. I have to go all out. And now the other kid took advantage of that. He let this guy go all out. He survived, and then he went on to win the game. And he went on to have a very good tournament. I was the only person to beat him. He went 4 out of 5. So just a lot of psychology going on. And of course, it's chess. Like, what do you expect? Like, this is what's gonna happen. But we don't really talk much about the mind games and the things that you have to, the obstacles you have to overcome in your mind during a game. We always talk about the pieces and the tactics and the positional ideas and the openings, but we don't give enough credit to the grit and the decision making and the practicality and the taking into account the tournament situation, all this kind of stuff. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was, like, especially with fighters, I've been seeing this a lot, and it's been really kind of motivating and inspirational to me. And it started off with Jon Jones. When Jon Jones won the heavyweight title of the world, the first thing he said was, "I would like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." And it's not even just Jon Jones. You see a lot of fighters do, a lot of good fighters too. And after winning this tournament, I felt like I had to do something. I'm Christian. I believe in God. I read the Bible every day. I felt like I had to say something. Now, say the first thing on my post is saying, "I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." It sounded a little bit cheesy, so I just wanted to. Instead, I just said, "I thank God for everything. For all the glory goes to God for all the wins, for winning this state title 3 times." And it felt like I was doing the right thing. And I think as I win more, as I do better, as I get better and better, I think I will give more and more credit to God. Because honestly, like, you can see with the day before where I lose my phone, I lose everything, and then the Sunday morning, I'm sitting there, like, I gave my opponent what I wanted, I'm down on time, and I'm struggling, like, without having this mental resistance, this mental resilience, this will to not give up, this will to not take draws, I have to give all that credit to just God and the things that I've read in the Bible and the things I've gone through in this journey of trying to make Grandmaster. So 100% give God the glory, and you will see more of that in the future. Another thing after this tournament is I only took a 1-day vacation. I mean, after Florida, I won half the amount of money, and I took 3-4 days off. Already here, I'm back in my seat. I did my chest training. I'm recording my podcast. Like, we're ready to go. And the reason is I have an overall goal of making Grandmaster. So every day off is going to make that way harder. So I can't be doing that anymore. So how am I going to make Grandmaster by the summer? Like, what is my plan for this? Like, we can say things and we can hope for, like, hey, I'm going to be one day the heavyweight champion of the world. But what are you going to actually do to make this happen? The person I played round 4, the guy who really attacked me, he's an older guy, but man, I love the way this guy plays chess. He lives pretty close by, and he honestly has a great sense of humor. I love his sense of humor. So we're going to train 3-4 hours at least once a week, but I think as it ramps up, because he loves to train, and his wife is a doctor, and he stays at home and takes care of the kids and just studies chess. So he's down, and he has a huge appetite for chess. He just needs someone to kind of motivate him or someone to train with, and I am ready. He has a great play style. His openings are super, super sharp, the best. And that is something that I think I've been lacking. I've been kind of going this way, that way, playing this, playing that, but never with full depth that this guy has. And that is something that I want to get out of this. And I really think training with him 3-4 hours a week on top of everything else will help me move in the right direction to make Grandmaster. I have 10 tournaments. I think I'm going to have about 10 tournaments. There's Chicago, there's Philly, Charlotte. I'm going to get one more in America, and then I'm going to go hit Europe for about 4 or 5 tournaments and see what I can do there. And 10 tournaments is definitely enough. Definitely enough. I want to leave America at least halfway there. So we'll see what happens. And the other things that I'm going to do are really read books. I'm really getting a lot of value out of reading these chess books, and almost like any book. Like, just keep reading, keep learning, keep having ideas in your head. And these patterns, these thought processes, they're going to become more natural and more efficient. So that's what I'm going to also supplement my training with. Just a heavy appetite for reading books. Also during tournaments and the off time, I want to be reading books. Like, no partying at night. You go back to your room, you have dinner, you go back to your room, you read books, you go to bed. Maybe you talk here, you go to the gym, something here. But majority of the time of my free time at chess tournaments, I will be reading books. And the last thing that I think that really is going to make a big impact for making GM by the end of the summer is body, mind, and spirit. Working out every day, going to the gym, running, training. Because not only does that build physical conditioning, it builds discipline in your mind. It builds discipline in the way you live your life. And when you have discipline in your life, you will have discipline in chess. If you don't have discipline in life, then you play chess without discipline. And that is something that I haven't been like terrible at. I think I'm pretty disciplined, or decently disciplined, but it's something that I can make much, much better. And I think if I can make that much, much better, that's going to go a long way. And then mind and spirit. Just be laser clear with what you're trying to do. If you're like, one day I'm going to make GM, or one day I'm going to do this, or I think my goal is this, I think your spirit kind of acts that way too. It's like, okay, he kind of wants to do it, I guess I kind of want to do it. But on the flip side, if you are like, I know I want to do this and I'm going to make it happen, your body, your mind, your spirit will get on board with that. So I think that's very, very important. Now, my next tournament is pretty much end of May. So I almost have 7-8 weeks of training before that happens. So I can actually have a legit training camp like a UFC fighter, like a boxer. So for me, training camp pretty much starts 4/4. Like, I've already kind of done some training, done some stuff in here. I didn't take a complete day off today. Like, I did get some work in. But really tomorrow, I need to start hitting the grind and getting this ready, because now there's no pressure. I have the title of state champion, as I've discussed with one of my friends, is pretty much like the same as being grandmaster almost to like normal people. Of course, the chess players is way, way different. But if you tell someone you're the state champion and you tell someone you're a grandmaster, they honestly might think that being state champion is better. Now, grandmaster is most of the time a lot better, but when people don't really know chess, when they hear state champion, they're like, oh, this guy's number one in the state, bet. So that's the pressure's off and the training begins. And also, I shall start streaming. Now that I don't really have games for a long time, I don't have to worry about opponents prepping. I don't have to worry about so much, especially since I'm so far out and since I'm learning so many different openings with my new training partner. I can play a bit more free online. So I'm definitely going to be streaming more and hitting that hard. So that is the chess section of the podcast, about 30 minutes of material. We're going to move on to a new category that I added that was pretty much like the student section, but business. I want to talk about business and chess next. All right, so this is the business section. This is a new section, but with the East Atlanta chess company, chess business really kind of taken off. It's time to, I think, add some information here just for people who play chess, who want to get in the business side, the TD side, or for business people who want to get involved in chess. So the first thing that I want to talk about, which I think is a very important lesson that I'm really learning, is learning to let people help and just realizing that different people excel in very different roles. Like, for example, for me, I can think about things, I can plan things, I can be there to run things. And I guess for the most part, I can kind of stand in front of people and talk. Like, that's not really a problem. But when it comes to promoting and spreading the word and really like almost being annoying with how much you tell everyone about things, I'm really bad at that. Like, I feel like I'm a nuisance almost, and that's why I don't like to do it. I don't like to keep texting a bunch of people, or keep posting on Instagram, or keep posting on Facebook, or keep sending out emails. I just feel like I'm reaching. It feels weird. But certain people, they love that. Like, there are people who get energy all day from talking to people all day. The way for me is I start out with a lot of energy, and for everyone I talk to, if it's not like a very stimulating conversation or I'm not learning something, I feel like I'm losing energy per conversation. Like, if we're not doing something, if not being engaged, if not like getting better at something, and I have to like talk to people all day, if I'm not like drinking beer or something, like it's very hard for me, or like I can only do it with certain people. Like I do have certain friends where we can sit around all day, talk, no problem. We can hang out all day. We just have very good chemistry. Our personalities mesh. But certain people, and this is actually something that I want to talk about at chess tournaments too. Like, I mean, I don't know, I guess, nice way to say it. But there are certain people who are very fun and interesting to talk to at chess tournaments. And there are certain people who ask you the same dumb questions again and again and again. Or who ask you, like, the most random questions. Like, one person asked me, is there a faster way to checkmate with king and rook versus king? I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, just checkmate them. Just do what you got to do. Like, I don't even understand why you're asking this question. So, certain people, like I said, are good at that. They're made for that. And especially, like, after this tournament, there are certain people in the community who are, like, they really want to push it. They want to promote it. They want to do all these different things with it. Something I think that's cool is I'm going to donate this trophy to the place that we run tournaments so that it can be up there, and it can almost be motivation for the kids who come and play, for people who come by. Like, one day you can become Georgia State champion. Trust me, it's possible. I'm nothing special. Like, I just practice and work hard and try to get better, and it's not like I was made, well, I don't know, maybe I was made to do this, but I'm not Magnus. Very, very far from Magnus, at least right now. So this is another thing with, I think, starting a company or being like the head of a company or being a big part of a company. You almost feel like it's your baby, like it's your child. And I kind of understand why certain parents and adults like are so like protective of their children. It's like you want it to be perfect. You don't want anything to mess up, and you feel like if someone else does something and messes up, it was out of your control, and you're like, no, I want to have control, because like at least I know if I mess up I can fix it, or at least I know I won't mess up, certain things like that. But it's also impossible to do everything by yourself. And if you do everything by yourself, you're not going to do it well, because there's so many things to do. So you really have to learn to like navigate, like based off this person's personality, I think they would be best doing this. Or this person wants to help, why would I say no? Let me do it. When he wants to do it, he's happy to do it, and he's looking to do it. So really, I think, and it's almost like you're playing chess, and each person is kind of a different piece, and they have their strengths and they have their weaknesses, and you want to put them in positions where they're going to be stronger. And that is the idea of the chess player, to know what pieces are going to be good where and how to put them in those positions. So I'm really starting to learn that, like, and I guess one other thing that where it gets kind of funny is also money. Like, if you're splitting percentages, if you're doing payments and stuff, then I think that's where I definitely have a lot of inexperience in how to split things, how to make things fair, the proper way to split things. So that is also something that I need to figure out, and something I will definitely be figuring out. One thing I will say is when there's a lot of money, it's very easy. Everyone gets paid well, everyone's happy. What's hard is when it's in the beginning, when there's really not much money coming in, where it's just like you're breaking even, or you're like making $100, and then if you have to split $100 three ways, it's like, man, I worked like a whole weekend to split and make $30. Like, that's going to be tough. But those are things that I think are very important, and something that you have to learn. And I think that what goes with this is just consistency. Like, if you want to be good, if you want to become a better business, if you want to be more successful, you have to just keep doing the same thing and keep improving. Just the same way as getting better at chess. You keep playing tournaments, you learn, do another tournament. You don't stop playing tournaments for 2 years and figure out what to do. Definitely you can take a break for a little bit. Like, you can take a month off, or you can slow it down. But the more time you take off, the more the lessons you learned are going to fade away, and the more you're going to have to relearn those lessons. So that's why I think it's very important to just be consistent, keep doing your thing. And then, like I said, like, get more help. And actually, I was going to talk about this at the end of this section, but I think it fits very well here. I think the core of a successful small business is building a strong client list. You must have, like, you can have a good product. The greater the product, the less effort you have to put in to the building the connections in the list. But even with good product, it is very important to have good personal connections, to have people happy to be in this business, to be customers of this business, and to just make sure that the customer is always kind of happy. Now, you don't want to go too far and like become like the customer servant, where like now they're telling you what to do. Like, I think you have to stand your ground in certain places, but I think it's very, very, very important that you help customers, you support them, and you build that list. And as the list builds, especially in the beginning, because word of mouth probably is like almost 60% of how you spread in the beginning. Because like with social media, with Instagram, with emails, like you only have so much of a reach because like you're still a small business. But if you do a good event, if you have a good product, people will be pushing that way better than you are. Like that's kind of been the way with chess lessons. Like ever since I kind of stepped up and have been really upping my chess lesson game, like students have been coming in pretty much like one per week if I could average it. Where like every week there's gonna be another guy who's like, hey, I heard about this, boom. Hey, I heard about this, boom. Hey, someone told me about this, boom. And then it grows and grows and grows, and then you have to, I guess, decide when critical mass is and when you can't do anymore. But I think as a small business, this is very, very important to becoming better and becoming more successful. Build that list until again, and even when it's when it's made, when it's big, I think there's a level to pretty much every business where you did all the hard work. Now you kind of sit back and relax. It kind of runs itself. Now you're gonna have different obstacles here and there, but for the most part, you have this brand name. You have Uber, you have Facebook, you have Google, where like people know if I need this, I go to this to get good results, or at least the best results. It's consumer trust, I guess, is a good way to put it. So that's, I think, a very big lesson that I've been learning in the beginning for growing business, just having people help and also really building that client list. Now, next thing that has kind of been really cool this past month is the state championship, which is going to have a boost for the club. Like one of the guys who's like really good at promoting has really pushed that I won, and that it's for the club, and the club's going to get better and we're going to grow. So that's really cool. But also we're getting a grant for chess tables in downtown or East Atlanta, where there's going to be a bunch of tables for chess, made for chess, and that basically like there's going to always be chess there if necessary, which is really cool. Like we're really like these are the baby steps of actually having an impact and a legacy on the community around you. Another thing that's happened is we got a $500 sponsor for the tournament, and it kind of just happened. Like he's one of the customers that comes every week. He plays in the tournaments. Really cool guy. We talked to him. Super nice, but also like huge bodybuilder dude, but cool guy, and like honestly like really good at chess. And since I know chess, I can talk to him from a non-scared point of view, a non-like this guy might beat me up kind of point of view. Like okay, I know how to fight. I do not think I could take this guy in a fight, at least like if he grabbed me. Maybe if I can stick and move on the outside, but forget all that. But I don't get intimidated because I can really talk about chess with him, and he has a very, very good understanding of chess. I think he's Greek or like Turkish or something. So very interesting guy, and he runs a really big like construction business all across Atlanta. And he offered like, hey, I'll give you guys $500 for the first prize. It's on me. Just like say my name, point out, blah blah blah, do all this, boom. So we already have a prize for a sponsor for over half the tournament entry or prizes, which is a great way to start. Now, something that I want to build this into, and it's not official, it's just been an idea that I had, is there's 3 prizes left. So this guy donated $500. We got a $200 prize, a $100 prize, and another $100 prize. And my idea is I want to make each prize have a sponsor, and then for the sponsors, I want to throw a dinner at a nice fancy restaurant, have dinner paid for, because we save all this money with the sponsors. We're going to give it back to them by having a nice dinner. And these guys are all invested in chess. Like they've all spent hundreds of dollars on chess. We're going to put them together, and then we can try to grow and see what happens there. Like I think having a lot of the leading chess sponsors, the leading chess enthusiasts together for dinner, I mean, that's got to be a good recipe for something, right? And pun on words intended with recipe for something. So this sponsorship dinner, I think, will be really cool. And I think what's really important right now is really riding this momentum. Like when you have things picking up, when you have like good factors, like we have a big tournament planned, that's the state championship. We have these tables in the works. We have a lot of business behind us. I don't want to take this slow. Now, with my chess style, I have recognized that I like to push a fast pace. But if I push too fast, it can get dangerous. I can end up in over my head, and things can get too much for me or for the business or for whatever I'm trying to do. So I'm definitely trying to keep in mind to go incrementally to the next step and not rush things and end up way too fast in. So it's very important, I think, balancing this writing momentum and having all these things happen with making sure that nothing becomes too much or too overwhelming, or like there's going to be some huge weakness that we're overlooking. So I'm very, very, very keeping in mind and keeping in tune with that to make sure that my mistakes in chess do not become my mistakes in business, because I've seen what I can do in chess from the wrong side for a long time. So I'm very conscious of it, and I'm trying to make sure that if I'm conscious about it, I can avoid something happening that I've seen before. And I think that's a very good way to think about just chess strategy and business strategy, merging them together. I do have another sponsor that, or not about sponsor, but a guy who's really trying to get into the chess scene. He hit me up, and we're going to have a talk this next week. They have another sponsor. He actually took us out to dinner, and I had elk for the first time. Elk was delicious. I would 100% recommend elk. It was so good. It came with gnocchi too, and beans, which was also just so good. I just wish that at nice restaurants they would give you more food. Like, what a tease, right? They give you the nicest food you've ever eaten, and the portions are so small. It's like, man, you gave me good stuff. I want more, right? Anyway, okay, so some other actually, the last thing I'm going to say about business that I think is very important, something that I've learned, is when you have kind of a rhythm and a schedule, be organized about it, make folders, and like schedule a routine out of it. So let me tell you, for example, like there's tournaments on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and then there's people who play a lot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, depending on what's going on in Atlanta. So every Monday, so every Monday morning, I schedule an email to tell people about the tournament Tuesday, Wednesday, and kind of the recap of the weekend. And then I try to put whatever else on there, like podcast, YouTube video, whatever else. And then my next email, so I send one Monday morning or evening, depending on how on top of everything I am. Ideally Sunday night, I schedule it, I send it, it's gone Monday morning. But I had this tournament, so I was having my little vacation post-tournament. And then, so email on Monday morning, and then email Wednesday morning, recapping the winners from Tuesdays, and updating people Wednesday about the tournament, and whatever else, podcasts, YouTube videos that happens in that time span. So basically two emails a week. I don't want to do like 5. That's going to be way too much. I'm going to lose people. And if I do 1, my logic is if I can do 2, I can help boost the Wednesday tournaments, at least for now. I think at some point, once again, business gets big enough, people know just subconsciously that there's tournaments every Tuesday, Wednesday, you do this, you do that. But until then, I'm trying to do twice a week to keep it kind of flowing, to keep people reminded. And then I'm trying to add more content and value to these emails as well. Just adding YouTube videos. I'm going to be streaming now, so adding the clips from that. So if people want to check that out, I think that would be great. I actually have had people from my email list be like, hey, man, I checked out your podcast because I saw it in the email list. Thought it was super cool. So I think this is also very important for business. Creating a schedule, creating kind of a reliable consistency to what people can expect. And I don't mean just on events, but also on kind of updating people on emails. I think having this flow of, okay, every Monday morning you're going to get this. Every Wednesday morning you're going to get this. Instagram post, also this schedule. And that way people get in a flow of what to expect. And once again, balancing is important. Don't do too much. Don't annoy people with how often you send stuff. So I think that's very important. And I think this has been a very nice section to add to the podcast, especially with how things are going right now. So next, I'm going to talk about my students and how they have been doing. All right, so the next section I'm going to talk about is for my chess students. I had about 13 compete in the state championship this past weekend, which was pretty good. I would say, so 8 students gained rating, 5 lost rating. No one really took a major hit. I will say the students who lost rating were more newer students. That being said, though, some of them were, we've done 3-4 classes, so I was a little bit surprised by that. Definitely going to have to iron out some kinks for these guys. For like the people who lost rating, definitely going to have to make sure that it wasn't because of blunders. And I'm pretty sure a couple of these guys made some blunders, like the younger kids and the people with less experience, and also the people who I think trained the least were the ones who lost rating. People who are really on top of their training, who are pretty serious about it. Pretty much I would say all of them gained rating. No one was really like, I trained so hard, I don't see what I did wrong. So I really have to emphasize and enforce that to the people who didn't have such good tournaments, to make sure you put in the work. This is kind of a indication of why things happened, and there's definitely a correlation between gaining rating and putting in work, and losing rating and not putting in as much work. So that's something that I've really seen. And something that I thought about is putting a puzzle punishment on people who blunder during tournaments. Like if you make like a pretty silly blunder, you got to do 10, 20 extra puzzles that week. And for every blunder you make that week, you're gonna add that onto your to-do list for next class. So if you, let's say for example, you blunder 4 times in a tournament, like you just give a piece, you make a very silly blunder, you're gonna have to do like 80 puzzles that week to have class the next week. And it's a punishment, but I think it's also going to address kind of the issue that we're seeing of people missing tactics. Now, if it's something else, like it's opening or it's positional, then I'm going to have to find some way to help enforce improving in those areas, other than just writing stuff down and practicing a little bit. I think that if you have a weakness throughout the week, you should try to work on it and get better at it, and just know what you're trying to focus on and what you're trying to fix. So I think that's gonna help these guys get better. But I mean, once again, overall, 8 students gained rating. Couple of them in the open, I think 2 in the open section. One of them crossed 2,000. One of them almost 2050. The other section, one of the girls ended up going 4 out of 5, winning I think maybe a couple $100, just definitely some money there. 4 out of 5. One of my other students, my little guy, who's been just on a tear this last couple months, gone from 400 to 750 in the last month. He actually won money at his first chess tournament. He won $50. And he's coming off winning his first trophy, and now that he's winning money, I'm sure he's very excited. And it was his first big major tournament where he played 2-3 days in a row, and he got to come with his friends. So like it was a good experience for him. I'm glad he won money, and I'm sure this will help motivate him to practice more and to do better. Like something that's really cool is I checked the training spreadsheet today, and I filled out. I still have to do my puzzles. But a lot of the guys who played in the tournament and did well, like they're already back training. They're already filling out their spreadsheet. They didn't take a day off. Monday they're back to work, and I think a lot of them are motivated. And I think seeing me win the tournament is also great motivation for them. And seeing me like do the training, I think I only missed training one day of the tournament. It was the Sunday. Like it was the big day and the last day and the victory day. So I took that day off. But next day, I'm back in here putting in work, and I think my students are picking up on that and starting to take their chess very seriously too. So I think that's really great to see. Now, I did have to make, I think, at least one cut, and I'm going to have a couple of conversations this week. And I think that's kind of how it should be. It's almost the same way Amazon runs businesses. If imagine an employee who just doesn't work, like you're going to get fired, right? I don't want to just take your parents' money or take your money. Like, you want to get better, you're paying to get better. And also, like, if you do bad or if you're not practicing, it makes me look bad. It makes the spreadsheet look bad. Like, I see a bunch of blanks, and I'm like, I don't want to ever see that. I want to see everyone putting in their 3 days of work. I think it's very, very important. So I'm really curious to see how these conversations are going to go. And it's honestly, it's not that many people. I think it's just 2 people. I think it's pretty much one cut, and like 2 people I just have to follow up with and be like, hey, I haven't seen you filling out the spreadsheet. I know they're serious, and I just have to let them know, like, hey, if you're not going to do it, then I'm not going to help you out. So there's that. Let's see, what else? So is another interesting one. Knowing when to push your students and knowing when to be kind and encourage your students. I think a lot of it really depends on how they're doing and it's a very intuitive thing where, like, if a student's doing good and they have, like, a slight hiccup, then you push your student because they're motivated and they can kind of take some criticism because they're working hard. And if you're practicing, if you're working hard, you're doing better, you can take criticism because you have security and confidence in knowing that you're putting in the work. But when someone is like not putting in work, when they're kind of on the edge, or another thing is like when they're just having a rough run, when just sometimes they're doing the right things but the results aren't coming, or like, you know, other things are going on in their life. They're very busy, or something else is very big in their like happening in their life. Like they just had a kid, or like they just had a breakup, or they just lost a job. Like certain things like that. If that's happening, that's when I think you play a little bit more like kinder with them. You're like, hey, I understand this is happening. We're gonna get better. We're gonna encourage. And I think okay, so one student, for example, like he had a pretty rough tournament. I think he only won one game, but I saw a lot of like highlights in his game where he was doing good things. Like I was really kind of almost impressed with the thought process that he was having, even though there was there were technical errors with what he was doing. And I let him know, like, hey, I think you're really on the right track. Like, you're doing the right thing. Just got to put in that training. And that's, I think, great motivation. And that's where I think it's bad to be like, well, of course you're doing bad. You didn't put in enough work. Like, be better. I think that's when you're going a bit too far. That's when you can actually break someone instead of make them stronger. So I think it is very important with kids and adults. And if anything, I'm going to say adults are more sensitive. Kids can kind of like just roll with it. If you tell them, hey, I'm not going to teach you. If you don't do this, they'll be like, okay, I'll do this. Like, I'm a kid. But adults, they're like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. Like, I have all these other things I'm trying to do. Like, I want to be great, but I want to be great at this. Like, with adults, it's much more complicated in my experience. So that I think is a good way to think about just balancing when to push, when to encourage. And it's not easy. No one teaches you how to do it. It's something that you see, something that you mess up a couple of times and you learn, and then you try to get better. And then last thing I wanted to say is I started teaching one kid chess and boxing at the same time, and now word of mouth is going. And someone texted me today saying like, hey, can you teach my son 1 hour boxing and 30 minutes of chess? And I'm like, I've only been boxing for a couple of years. I'm not really certified to teach it. So let's try to do 30 minutes and 30 minutes. That's probably the best that I can do. And we'll work from there. But it's cool being able to, having someone contact you and saying, okay, I want to learn chess and boxing. Kind of makes me feel like, hey, I'm actually starting to become a boxer, or someone that can say that they box because I'm teaching other people, right? So anyway, that's the not too much from the student side, now that there's a business side too, but I think a very important side. And next I'm going to get into stand-up, jiu-jitsu, and then life. All right, so for stand-up comedy, it's been a bit light with all the tournaments back and forth and the new schedule with Tuesday and Wednesday tournaments, but I do have a schedule now, Mondays and Fridays. Unfortunately, I was really thinking about going today, but with the podcast and with everything, and then I just didn't want to travel, so I was like, all right, I'll wait. Now, I did change the way I write, so instead of writing whole kind of scripts for a set, I made a folder called Bit Factory. And what this is a bunch of small bits here and there, and just kind of like funny lines, funny taglines that I think about during and honestly I was going to say during my chess games, which I do think about a lot of stand-up during chess, but anyway, just basically a folder full of small bits, and then I'm going to use those small bits to make sets, make 5-minute sets, 4-minute sets, and then I can kind of play with them. Because what I was seeing was I would write a whole set, have a bunch of bits in there, and then I'd be like, okay, I don't know if I like this set, and then I'd go write another one. I'd have a bunch of bits in there, and there was always a couple bits that I would keep because I knew they were good, but I feel like I lost a lot of stuff writing with this kind of organization. So now I'm going to try to have it bit by bit by bit, and then assemble sets, and that way I can disassemble them really fast, I can assemble them really fast, because it's just a bunch of small sections, and then the real art, the real chess of it is putting it all together. So that's going to be something that's very interesting. Like I said, adapting to the schedule, the new schedule. It was a little different because back in the day, I could go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now with chess tournaments, it's funny. Like with students, you can make it happen, but with chess tournaments, they always go till 9:30 or 10, and it's very hard for me to. There's basically just no open mics that start that late, except on Monday and Friday. So really, I would hope that there would be more open mics that kind of go late. Maybe it's something that I have to do some more digging with, and I'll probably do some talking, some networking with people next show I go, just to see like, hey, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, are there any late night sets that I can hit? Because that's when I'm alive. That's when I'm awake, and I have no problem staying up late. So hopefully there can be more sets that are available late night. But I think with this new kind of idea of writing, it's going to be very interesting to go. Now, one other thing that I am going to try is on Fridays, the line, like I described last podcast, is just super long. Like I get there early, and as soon as I get to the list, I'm like number 20, number 22nd, which I just can't stay there forever and just hope that at 1:30 I can get a nice spot. Maybe I'm being kind of a prima donna about it, and I should be just accepting of whatever I get. But I was gonna try to see if I could pay like $50 to the person who runs the show and say like, hey, if I give you $50, can I go fourth? That way the crowd's alive. I don't waste my whole kind of evening, and I can get the best feedback, because I also want to start recording these and putting them on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all this stuff. I haven't gotten to put any clips up recently because I haven't really had the chance to go as much. So I think it's worth the $50, and I think it's a win-win for the person who runs the show to actually be like, hey, I made money off my show. Because I mean, I feel for the most part they do it just kind of out as like just being an organizer, just running events. I don't really know if they make money. If they do, it's probably paid by the venue or the bar, or like a bar tab or something like that. And I'm sure like $50 is good enough to be like, okay, cool, that's enough money. Like I'll make something happen for you. All it is letting me go a bit earlier, and it's just like a 4 or 5 minute set, so it's nothing crazy. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if this lubrication of the system works, and I will let you guys know how that goes. And then last thing that I really want to kind of touch is just, I've been using like, I haven't practiced enough, I haven't written enough as an excuse. So I think it's really important that I kind of sit down, I put together a couple sets that way, and then I just practice every day. That way, if it ever does come up, or if I haven't had time to like rewrite or redo something, I always have a couple go-to sets that I can kind of use, because it's at the point where like I've written enough, I've gone enough, like I just need to go up. Like it's almost like with boxing and jiu-jitsu, like I just need to spar. That way I can really find out what the problem is, because I've been writing, I've been having all these theories about like, okay, this bit should be good, but I don't actually know if this bit is good. So that is why going up is so important. And then also just getting those reps. I would say I'm a lot more comfortable on stage now. I'm not running back and forth on stage, pretty much standing still, maybe rocking a little bit, shifting weights. You'll see a lot from left to right. But even with all this, I can stand completely still and just move my hands for at least a minute now, where before it was just impossible. So this is definitely progress that I like to see. And then last thing that I actually want to say about stand-up, it's been a very short section this week. Hopefully with me going up more in the next couple of weeks, or the next week, I'll have a lot more to talk about. But I've been using bits and just common conversations more. Like anytime a topic comes up that I've thought about something, I'll try this bit on something. I'll just say my line, and it's a good way to practice. Like, hey, is this actually funny? Kind of the problem is when you use it on friends, they always laugh. When you use it on strangers, they half laugh. So you don't actually collect that much information. But the thing you do know is if people like you, they will laugh more. And that's why winning the crowd over, the intangibles, or like I'm not going to say intangibles, but the other factors of doing stand-up, with like how you present yourself, the energy that you give off, the attitude toward the crowd, that's going to affect the feedback from the crowd and the success of the bit a lot more. So I think that's going to be very important. And that is all I have for stand-up for this week. I actually have a decently big jiu-jitsu and boxing section, and then life to close it out. All right, so this is a pretty fun section, the jiu-jitsu and boxing, just because we have an amazing card coming up this Saturday. My boy, Israel Adesanya, is fighting Pereira for the third time. The new middleweight champion of the world, Alex Pereira, versus my guy, my number one, Israel Adesanya. And this is going to be a fight. Israel is the favorite, I think rightfully so. But, man, Pereira is so good. Like, this is one of those fights where, like, you know it's going to be good. You know at any moment it could be over. Like we saw at the last fight, literally the fifth round, it is not us. Adesanya had already won on the cards. All he had to do was not get knocked out, and Pereira came at him like a wolf, ready for his meal. And that's why I'm excited. Like, these are the fights where you really want to watch, when you just don't know what could happen. Anything could happen. And honestly, my only wish is I hope it isn't short. I hope it's not like over in one round. If Adesanya wins in the first minute, I'm not going to be complaining, but I would like it to be over, just because I think we can see a lot of cool striking, a lot of good technical striking, and these guys are just like so good, so strong, and just so well trained. Like, this is really, you're seeing like two superheroes fight. You're seeing two of the top assassins in the world fight. Like, this is some real movie type of stuff. Like Jason Bourne, when you see those assassins fight each other and you're like, oh my god, look at what they're doing. This is actually what you see when you see these guys fighting. And this is why I love watching the UFC, because it is from wall to wall. It's almost like watching a horror movie condensed to like 15, 25 minutes. And this is actually like, this is a small tangent, but this is why I like watching horror movies so much. Because for the most part, you're just fully engaged. There's not really a lot of dead time because you never know what could happen. And there's a lot of build up, a lot of anticipation. And you're always kind of like waiting. You're always kind of on your seat. Where some movies, when stuff's happening in the background, you're just like in your head. You're just thinking about what you did yesterday or this thing or that thing. But with these guys, you ain't got time for that. Because you are dialed in, waiting like, dude, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I'm watching this. So really excited. Of course, I'm going to pick Adesanya. Of course, I'm going to bet on Adesanya. Of course, I'm hoping that he wins. I honestly do think he can win. There's things that I've heard that like make me think this. And this is just kind of, first thing is just statistically out of 10 fights, like these guys are so closely matched. And I think Adesanya in general is the better fighter. It's just Pereira has the nuclear option where he can knock someone out with any touch of his hands. And Adesanya's done a really good job of avoiding that and of actually putting Pereira in dangerous waters. Like he's had Pereira hurt multiple times. Both fights he lost by knockout, he was very close to knocking out Pereira in both those fights. So no one should ever say like Adesanya got destroyed, Adesanya lost, Adesanya was getting dominated. No way. Adesanya's been winning every single fight and has been close to checkmating this guy every time. It's just somehow Pereira survives and just it gets tough. And Adesanya's not the type of guy to quit. He's not the type of guy to be like, there are multiple videos of him going into the last round of just very grueling fights saying to himself, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to die out here. I will put my life on the line for this. So, I mean, that's why this fight is just so big. So I will pay money to watch this fight. Like, one day, when I'm rich and I have all the money, this is the kind of fight that I would show up to. And on top of that, this is the kind of card that I would show up to. Just because there's just so many good fights that I want to go through just real quick. Next, we got Masvidal versus Burns. This one's a very interesting one because Masvidal is kind of fighting for everything he has left here. He said that if he loses this fight, he's retiring. I think it makes sense if he loses this fight. He's retiring. He could take a couple money fights here and there with like someone else who's a big name. But basically the title aspirations, if he loses this, are over. And then to go with that, Burns is a great fighter. Like this, here's another thing with the top of these divisions that are so deep and so strong. It's like you can lose 3 fights in a row, but you're losing to world champion, title contender number 1, and then title contender number 2. Or world champion, title contender number 1, and then world champion again, and then title contender number 1 again. So it's like you don't really get any breaks with this. Like you're fighting like absolute killers, absolute assassins, and it's so much like if you zigged one way when you should have zagged, that's the difference between being awake and being asleep. So I mean, like we said, like if you have this fight 10 times, 5 out of the times like each person's gonna win. But sometimes 3 times in a row, one guy wins just because that's just the way it was. And it's like that's why I think training is so important because you can control training. You can control how you react. You can control how you learn. But in the moment, there's a lot of factors that you can't control. Like you come in with a hurt ankle, you come in with a hurt shoulder, you come in with a tweaked ankle, stuff like this. So you never know. And that's why I'm really excited for this fight because I just know how important it is for these guys in this fight. So that's going to be another really great fight. Let me just throw in Roy Jones versus Anthony Pettis, which I thought was an okay fight. I'm like, after this fight, I'm really against these exhibitions. Like, they really seem like money grabs, and they're just, like, using brand names to kind of push and get people to buy pay-per-views. Since I've been, like, training for a couple years now, like, when I watch fighting, like, I want to learn. I want to see good technical fighting. I want to see people going. I want to learn something. And with these exhibitions, for the most part, I'm not really learning so much. Something you see is, like, I would say like 90% of them go the distance. Because these guys are fighting, like, they're not really fighting for a title. They're not fighting for, if you win, you get to fight someone bigger, and then you're trying to get a title and get more money. They already got paid. They're basically, like, all well-fed cats that are just, like, playing with each other. I mean, it might be a weird metaphor to make, But I will say the fight before Roy Jones versus Pettis, Jacare Souza versus Vitor Belfort. Now that was a good fight. It went to decision, but man, like Jacare got dropped twice. He was hurting Belfort at the end. Like that was a fight that I was really excited to watch. So it's not that I'm so anti-decisions that I have to see a knockout, but I want to really see these people going at each other and really like trying to hurt each other, because like that's what real competition is. Like that's how you're gonna fight. And with Jones versus Pettis, like dude, back in the day, like y'all must have forgot, Roy Jones was like literally a god in fighting. Like him, Mike Tyson, like they have this moniker about them, where like when they fight, anything can like they could finish this guy in 1 second and 10 seconds and 2 minutes in the last second of the bell. So like that's why like watching these guys back in their primes, it was so exciting. It's literally like watching Adesanya versus Pereira. So all respect to Roy Jones. He's like 54 I think now. Definitely like not the shape that he was in when he was young. Still put on a good fight. Like Pettis is a good fighter. Not a true boxer, but he's a striker. So it definitely there's some correlation. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of these boxing exhibitions. Because I just don't I don't see the same level of intensity that I see with UFC or like with championship fights or with two boxers that are really gunning for a title or something. There's the motivation and the vigor and the aggressiveness just aren't the same, I would say. So okay, anyway, back to UFC. And this is why I love UFC, because I just think there's a real big schedule. There's a goal for fighting to make champion. There's like ranking system, even though it is a little subjective. I think a lot of it makes sense. And in UFC, they put people who should be fighting together. They put two absolute studs against each other. One of them's gonna win, one of them's gonna lose. And now they can sometimes they can both gain stock, but a lot of times someone's got to win, and that's what makes it very interesting. So the next fight that I want to talk about is Adrian Yanez versus Rob Font. So Yanez is a hell of a boxer. Something kind of funny is they call him Mini Masvidal because he has such good hands. And I saw this guy maybe 2-3 years ago, and I was like, this guy couldn't be champion. The way he fights, the hands he has, like this guy actually has a chance of making champion. And ever since I saw that, the dude hasn't lost. He's won maybe 4 or 5 in a row, all against good people. He's making progress, and now he's got a real fighter in front of him. Not that the other people weren't real, but this guy was contending for titles at one point. And he's still young, Rob Font, and he's one of those Boston Cartel guys. So I'm really excited to see this fight because this is two good strikers. Once again, I'm going to ride with Yanez because I think Yanez is just such a good talent. But I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Next, we have Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. This one's going to be a very fun fight too because both these guys are really good strikers. They have great hands, and Holland's kind of been fighting these wrestlers recently. He had an absolutely amazing fight with Stephen Thompson. I thought that was an amazing fight, even though he lost. It was just like a striking, just wow, just like maybe fight of the year in my opinion. And Ponzinibbio is a good fighter. He's got hands. He had one kind of bad knockout after he was coming off kind of a big layaway against Li Liang. But ever since then, he's been rejuvenated. He's been fighting well. And I'm going to ride with Holland, but I think it'll be another fun fight. The next one, Carl Rosas Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez. The crazy part here is this kid, Carl Rosas Jr., is 18 years old. And Christian Rodriguez isn't that young either, or isn't that old either. He's 25, which in MMA terms is like insane. It's like most people who when they kind of enter the UFC are like 28, or like maybe if they're like really good and they start young, like 23, 24. And this kid is 18. He's gonna have such a long career in the UFC, and he is a very good fighter. His ground game is next level. It really like blows my mind how young this guy is and how he can put together everything so efficiently and so well. I think like this last fight, he went from a Superman punch into a blast double, which is like this kid is the next generation, the next level of MMA, of where like if you start young, if you start training, like you can really get to a very proficient level by the age of 18, 20. And since you've been starting with such different like a bunch of bases, like it's gonna be the first time we're seeing like hybrid fighters like this. Like in the beginning, it was like you were a wrestler, you were a striker, or you did jiu-jitsu, and you fought someone who was a wrestler, a striker who did jiu-jitsu. And generally, like, it would be wrestler versus jiu-jitsu or striker versus wrestler. And whoever got their game plan pretty much won. Because back in the day, you would grow up a wrestler, you would grow up a boxer, and then you would go on to fight in these organizations. Now these kids are starting off 8 years old, 7 years old. They're doing jiu-jitsu, they're striking, and they're wrestling. If you started all three and started at a young age, the level of proficiency you can get by, for example, age 18, 10 years into the game of all three aspects, you can get really good, and that's when you're going to start seeing these hybrid moves of going from punches to takedowns, from going from takedowns to strikes, or seeing spinning back fists, spinning attacks in different places that we weren't used to. So that's why I'm very excited for this fight. And now Christian Rodriguez, no slouch. He's a good fighter too. He's young. He's getting better. So I'm once again very curious to see what's going to happen in this fight. As far as riding with anyone, I think Rose is going to be a big favorite. So if you're going to bet, I would bet on Christian, just because you're going to have good plus money on a good guy who's getting better. But it could also look like a wash if Roses is just as good as he's making it seem like. Next, we have Gastelum versus Curtis. And this is not me going through every fight on the card. I'm just going through the fights that I think are going to be fun and interesting. And it just so happens that so many of these fights are just very good quality fights for such a strong pay-per-view. So Gastelum versus Curtis, both these guys are just so tough, and Curtis hits like a truck. But if Gastelum can kind of stick and move on the outside, stay at a distance, Curtis can definitely be frustrated. I definitely could see this. Curtis reminds me of playing my round 4 opponent, where it's like he's a bit older, but man, this guy can throw. But if you get him frustrated, you're going to see him make some kind of opening that he's not kind of accustomed to. So that will be very interesting. For this, I would say the fight goes the distance. Over 2.5 would make sense, because just both these guys are so tough. But both of them have definitely finishing potential. But I would say Gastelum should not be able to finish Curtis, and Curtis should be able to finish Gastelum. Like, Gastelum will definitely hit Curtis with a lot of shots, but I think Curtis is tough enough to take him. But Curtis does hit so hard, I think he has a chance to knock out Gastelum. But once again, Gastelum, you can hit him with the shovel, and he'll be okay. Like, this guy is very, very, very tough. So, just once again, another very fun fight that I'm excited to watch. Next, Waterson versus Pinheiro. And the only reason I want to talk about this fight is Waterson is like one of the prettiest girls I've ever seen. And has great karate, great jiu-jitsu, like is just a good fighter. It's like, wow, that's just super attractive. And Pinheiro is just a very tough girl. So, okay, like, Waterson is beautiful, and I definitely want to watch the fight. And she's really fun too. Like, they had the dance off at one of the face-offs. So just a very fun person. But Pinheiro is a tough girl, and I think we're gonna see a good quality fight here too. I think if Waterson gets to the ground, she might actually have a chance. She has very creative striking. You can see a lot of side kicks, a lot of like axe kicks, just a lot of different stuff thrown out, and I think that's gonna make this fight very fun to watch as well. Next, I have Jiro Mershart 3 versus Joe Pyfer. Another one. Joe Pyfer has, I think, 50 fights and like 20 submissions, something insane. So this guy is live for anything. Now, Hamzat Chimaev did knock this guy out in 30 seconds, but it's also Chimaev. And ever since that knockout, like, Jiro Mershart's chin has gotten way better. Like, I saw him fight Murdoch, like some like scary European dude, and the guy hit him with some really big shots, but GM3 just did not go down. So this one's going to be a very interesting fight. Like, Joe Pyfer is an up-and-coming prospect, had this huge knockout on Dana White's Contender Series, and I think even like Kanye made a remix, or they made some song about it. So that's really cool. So this is going to be a fun fight. Williams versus Chase Sherman. I just have a huge soft spot for Chase Sherman. I just think if he can get over the mental battles, he can get much better. The other problem is his ground game is very weak. Another thing is he looks a lot like my boxing coach. I even sent my boxing coach a picture, and I was like, dude, this looks like you, but heavyweight version. And he's like, haha, yeah, that's true. So this one could be a wash. I think Williams could finish him in the first round, but I've seen Chase Sherman. I'm rooting for him. I hope he can turn it around and get a dub here. It would be a huge upset, a huge comeback, which would be really, really cool to see. And then kind of last for the UFC, and the last of the fights that I'm looking forward to this weekend is Bahamundez versus Trey Ogden. It's not that I'm looking forward to Trey Ogden, but Bahamundez is a very, very good striker. He has this spinning wheel kick knockout against Roosevelt Roberts, which was just so sick. and it was very nice to highlight. This kid's up and coming. I think he trains with what's this kid's name? Not this kid. Wow, I'm talking like Dana White. Bilal Muhammad. And Bilal Muhammad was like, watch out for this guy. He's just a very fun fighter, very flashy striker. He is hittable, but Trey Ogden is not really the kind of person to really put you out on your feet. Whereas Bahamundez can really make him work, and he has some really cool kicks. I think he has another front kick knockout, which is also super sick. So those are the fights from the card I'm really looking forward to. There's some other fights there, but they're not going to be the level of these. And pretty much top to bottom, all these fights I think can be really, really fun fights. Now, another thing I did for Jiu-Jitsu and boxing was I've been watching some old boxing fights. I watched Duran versus Hagler, which I thought was it was a good fight, fun fight to watch. I think I should have watched Hagler a little bit earlier in his career. I think this one, they were both kind of a little bit older and past their prime. But, I mean, I watched all 12 rounds. It was a fun fight, and it's really cool watching these old fights. And I think when I take breaks in tournaments, like when I go to chess tournaments, and instead of reading a chess book, I think I'm going to rewatch some of these old fights too, just from the history aspect, the technique aspect, and just from the respect to the old dogs. Like, I think that would be something that I will be doing during tournaments to take my mind off of stuff and everything else. All right, so to wrap this up, the boxing and jiu-jitsu section, I already talked about teaching boxing. It's gonna be interesting. What I'm thinking of doing is just having them work on their jabs, their crosses, their hooks, doing some combinations with them, and then I'll teach them some cool kind of combinations that I've learned, that I've seen, that'll help kind of make them like really think boxing is fun and cool. And then I'll do some light sparring with them, where I'll just like cover up and let them try to hit me, and I'll move and do all that kind of stuff, and see what they can do. So that'll be interesting and fun, and you guys will hear next podcast of how that goes. Yeah, so to finish it off, just running, working out, getting back in the gym. That's something that I'm doing now that I have a big break between tournaments. I will be just focusing on all aspects of my life, getting everything together, and getting ready for this GM run that I'm trying to make coming up. And then mentally, just like chess makes you survive better and makes you last longer, I think mental strength, being mentally forward, like having mental fortitude in boxing and jiu-jitsu, it makes you last longer in these fights. It makes your chin stronger. You can take more punishment, more damage, because you're not like waiting to get knocked out. You're like, this guy's got to hit me with a brick, hit me with a shovel for me to get knocked out. And if you do that, I mean, yeah, sometimes they're gonna hit you, and there's nothing you can do. But I definitely think you can take more damage, and you can persevere more, and you can last longer and fight longer with that mentality in mind, where it's like, I know I'm gonna get hit. I'm ready to get hit. If I get hit, this is what it is, and I'm just gonna keep going. Gonna keep going forward. My goal is to learn and to get better, and that is what I'm going to do. So that wraps up the martial arts section, and lastly, we're going to go to life, and then that's going to be it for this episode. All right, so for the last section of the podcast, just life. Just how, like, the first thing I want to talk about was how, like, just chess has affected stand-up, business, martial arts, and other stuff. Something that I've been doing is, like, when you're getting better at chess, when you're, like, coached by grandmasters, they really teach you how to use chess base, and to how do you like get better at openings, be organized. And the same thing that I do in chess with like making all my opening files and putting them in folders and organizing them, I've been doing this in business and martial arts too, and stand up. Like with the bit factory, making a folder with all your bits, organizing them is just like chess base. With business, I've been making to-do lists of stuff for us to do to get done, just like chess base. And then for martial arts, the last step is putting together combinations, making a repertoire of what you're going to use. That's exactly like chess. So I think it's a really cool thing of like when you get very good at one thing, you kind of learn what you got to do to get better. And that thought process, that work ethic, the technique that you use to become better, is I think very important. And that's definitely translated to the other things that I'm doing. Now, I definitely have a long way to go, but I can definitely see that being organized, being conscious of what I'm trying to do, I'm conscious about how I'm going to get better, is I think helping a lot. Another thing about life is I'm actually very close to finishing the Bible. It's 706 days in, and I have maybe 6 to 8 chapters left. I'm in Zechariah, And I think there's one book after this. It's like the last book of the Old Testament, and it's only like 2 chapters. So I think that's gonna be really cool. I'm gonna make a post about it and be like, I haven't reread the first the first thing that I wrote down. So I started the New Testament like 3 years ago, and I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I remember it was like post breakup. It was like this, oh life, oh my god, what's going on? And then to see myself now after like post winning state championship, like I really feel, and I was thinking about this while running today, is like I think I'm officially like a young man. Like I wouldn't say I'm a man yet, but you can definitely tell the difference between me now and me back then. Completely different people. And I think that's really cool to see. And I mean, of course, a lot has happened in life, and there's been things here and there. But I think having this core of reading the Bible every day, at least attempting to read the Bible every day. Of course, I missed like probably of 2 years of reading the Bible. I've also missed like a year or two of just days that I've missed, weekends that I've missed. I will say during the weekend is probably the least amount of times I've read the Bible. If I was gonna do a stat analysis of me reading the Bible, but yeah, I'm really excited to be finished. I was thinking about finishing it on Sunday, like after the tournament, and just finishing going through. But I was like, no need to rush it. It's the Bible. Let me keep going. And I mean, just some lessons from the Bible. I guess like I would do this more in the next one or after I finish. But definitely just, I think getting your mind right, definitely like a lot of times you'll see the Bible calls you out when you're doing the wrong thing. And it's like really weird, the coincidence of when it happens or how it happens. But I've seen it a lot. Like when I'm messing up in life, like the same day I read a Bible verse and it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like this guy did this and now he's paying for it this way. And then sometimes when I'm kind of like I'm feeling hopeless, or when I'm feeling like I don't know if I can do it, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, like how am I gonna solve all these problems? The verse I read that day is like, God's got your back, don't worry, you're gonna be okay. Other people have been through worse. And it'd be cool to kind of like do a very in-depth read the next time. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do after I finish the Bible. Am I gonna read it again? Am I gonna start reading other books? What's gonna be the plan? That's something that I'm gonna have to figure out. But really cool to be able to say that I read the whole Bible, at least at some point. So that's almost done. And I think that leads to the next thing really well is, and I was talking about this today with a friend of mine, but I think as human beings, we should try to approach this final form, this like God mode. And I don't want to like take the Lord's name in vain by saying God mode, but basically this version of ourselves where we have conquered all the things that have been holding us back, where we have surpassed all the things that we didn't think that we could do. That is what I think every human being should really strive for. Not, I mean, yeah, UFC champion, world champion, CEO, that's all great too. And I think that is a great byproduct of achieving this final form. Like, I think if you talk to like UFC champions or CEOs, obviously they're well put together. Obviously they've been through a lot and they've learned a lot, and they are pretty much in their final form, if not like they're very close. And that is something that I'm trying to do with all these things, with stand-up, jiu-jitsu, chess, boxing, reading the Bible, starting a business. Like, I think that is the final form that I'm trying to approach by doing all these things. And I think it's a good thing to have, and I think it's a good thing that everyone should do. Okay, a couple of weird random things, and then actually I'm going to end on arranged marriages, and then we'll be done. We'll be good to go. So why girls walk fast and guys walk slow? I was thinking about this. I was like, because every girl I know pretty much walks like really fast, and most guys I know like walk pretty slow. I would say I walk like medium fast, not like super slow, super fast. And I realized like I was walking at night, and I was walking so slow, and with no problem, and I was just chilling. And then I realized like when girls walk at night, they kind of are walking for their life, right? Like certain like serial killers, they always target like girls. You never see like a serial killer kills 10 Indian guys. Like we kind of live life differently in certain regards. And I think that's why girls kind of just walk naturally fast, because it's almost like the longer you're out there, the more trouble can happen. Because for girls, trouble tries to find them, I think, a lot more than with guys. Like for guys, like we try to find trouble, like because we're not really worried about it so much. But with girls, it can be very fatal. It can be very consequential, which is why I think girls walk fast, are more careful and more risk adverse. And I think just logically and biologically it makes sense, and it's something that I've seen. So that's an interesting thing I thought about. Another thing I thought about is, imagine going to war back in the day, like fighting other men with swords. Like, dude, that sounds terrible. First off, I'm 5'6.5". If I run at a guy who's 6'5" and he's running at me, what am I supposed to do with a sword? Like, for real. Like, how am I going to use this sword to chop this guy's hand off or his head off? And then his 1,000 other 6'5" homies, what am I going to do with them? That's why I think, like, gun warfare and tactical warfare is definitely a lot better than just being a brute and just like fighting someone who's genetically not the same level, right? So that's another thing that I've thought about. Also, okay, I want to talk about this. This wasn't originally on, but war tactics. I was rewatching some Game of Thrones, and the fight where they fight the undead army was like some of the stupidest tactical decisions I've ever seen in my life. And maybe this is because I play chess, or maybe because I watched some videos on this. But like, first off, you don't run straight with your horses. You come in from the side. Second off, if you're gonna fight an army of the undead and you're just sitting around waiting, you gotta build trenches, because you kind of know what wall they're gonna hit, what field they're gonna attack you from. Bro, get to work on that field. Build land, like, I don't know about landmines, but make holes, make it hard for them to run straight at you. Build trenches, like attack them from above. Like, it was very questionable what these guys were doing when they decided to fight this undead army. So war tactics are just like very questionable. Like, also the British army, they would just stand straight and shoot at you. I mean, talk about a terrible way to fight battle. Like, imagine if you're standing straight and no one else is standing straight in front of you. They're all shooting you from the side. What are you gonna do? They just had this code and this, I guess, I don't know, the way they did things. But that's what happens when you don't really have people thinking and trying to play for the win. Like, the thing with the British is they had a navy. They had a kick-ass navy, which really helped them conquer the world. But war tactics, like, I guess they were because the navy was so good, their land tactics were just very, very questionable. So definitely things that I think I'm glad are improved, but also, like, I don't know how you did it back in the day. Like, okay, last thing I'm going to say about this is the Mongols, they actually had really good war tactics. Like, they would do some pretty crazy stuff, because, I mean, I guess they were just really smart people, but they knew how to get things done. Another thing that I thought about is, imagine giving birth back in the day. Like, hey, your tub is ready. Like, imagine about to give birth, you're in pain, and they put you in a bathtub, and you sit there. I mean, I'm never going to give birth, so I can't imagine how much it hurts. I'm sure it's not easy, but imagine doing it in a bathtub with a bunch, like, one lady holding your hand, and she's got scissors just in case. Like, that's got to be stressful. Like, back in the day, girls were like, dude, I'm pregnant, my life could be over. Nowadays, girls get pregnant, and the guy's like, dang, my life could be over. Like, that's the difference between back in the day and now in the day. Another thing I gotta ask is, why do people live in cold places? Like, I don't understand. There is zero upside to living in a place that's cold, in my opinion. When the weather's nice, it's fun to be alive. It's fun to be outside. It's fun to just do anything. When it's rainy, when it's freezing, snowing is actually okay, because it's not too cold and it's kind of pretty. But if it's raining, if it's freezing, like, you're just happy to be alive, I guess. But, like, in the opposite way, it's like, well, at least I'm alive. Where when it's sunny and it's beautiful, you're like, man, I just love being alive. So, I don't know, like, if you have a choice, like, I was thinking about this in Game of Thrones. Like, if I could choose where I was going to live, I would never live in the north. I would live in the south, where the weather's nice and it's fun to be out. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess some people like it. But, like, if you have a choice, like, why would you live in New York during the winter? Why don't you just live in Arizona or Georgia or Texas or Florida? Those seem like way more better places to go. So, yeah, that's my thing on the cold. Now, pressure on older women. I'm going to make this really quick because it's probably going to be really awkward. But it's funny, like when I turn 30, I'm like, oh man, I'm a young man. But when girls turn 30, they're like, dang, I only got like 5, 10 years left to give birth to children, which I think is really unfortunate. Like basically after the age of like 38 or 40, it's like really weird or hard for women to give birth. Um, but for guys, it's like, oh yeah, I'm 38. I can give my wife can give birth, no problem. She's like 28 or she's like 26 or some age like that. So I just do feel bad. My heart goes out to women who are like getting older and are running out of time to have kids. I'm really happy I'm a guy, but I understand the pain, and that kind of puts things in a weird context sometimes. Going to the next kind of things is like just dating. I think since I've dated a couple people, I have a very, very different approach. As in like, and this is the thing with arranged marriages versus someone has dated a couple people. Like when you date a couple people, you see problems before they happen. You understand like, okay, I've been with this kind of person before, and I'm not gonna like when this person does this, and I see that you do this, and I see that you have these qualities, and I see that you have this. We should talk about it. We could try to figure it out. But at some point, if you're gonna always be doing this, then I don't think I want to like commit long term to something that I know that eventually this is gonna be a problem for me. And that's like I think really the big difference between being young and being old, or for example having an arranged marriage. Like people who get arranged marriages, this is most of the time what happened. They don't have any choices. They're given 2 or 3 choices, and they take one of those choices. If you don't have any choices, then yeah, you'll be fine taking any choice. You'll be fine taking the choice. It's the only choice you have. And then pretty much like you'll be happy with whatever qualities this woman or this man has. Even if it's good or bad, you're like, well, this is what I'm going to have, so I'm going to take this. So I think that's why it's very important to assess people before you kind of jump into something so important and something so like permanent and big. Like I'm a big believer that if you get married, it's for life. This is the way it's going to be. Like we're going to have kids together. And there's really no plan B. There's no like, another pun on words, no plan B. But there's no like, all right, if this doesn't work, we'll just get divorced and we'll find someone else. Like, if I'm gonna get married, like I'm gonna get married. Like this is a big way of how I do things. Like, generally, if I'm gonna commit a lot of time and take it seriously, like I'm gonna take it very seriously. And I think this is the right way to do things. And I think this is why like people should really get to know people first. I think it's also important. Of course, if you can marry the first person you meet and it's perfect, it's great. But there's a huge upside to dating multiple people and kind of knowing the different archetypes of women or men that you're going to face. And it's just like and a good way to kind of wrap around this episode is just like when I have archetypes in chess, when I kind of know this is what's going to be good, this is what's going to be weak against them, or this is how I should play this position. Same thing with people. You start kind of having like, okay, I've seen this kind of person before, and they've had different names, but generally this is kind of how you act, how you believe, how you behave, and what you think about. And that way you know if it's a good fit or a bad fit. Now, I think everything you should give a chance, everything you should be fair. Like, even, like, I've never really hated anyone. I've never really been against anyone. I've been friends with every pretty much type of people. If you've been to jail, if you've done this, if you cheat on this person, like, I respect you're a person. You make mistakes. If you repeatedly make mistakes and don't change, then I have to say, like, hey, okay, you're this type of person. Either I can't associate, or I can't associate only to this length of friendship. But I try to be as fair with everyone. But if I'm going to have someone I'm going to get married to, I take that very seriously, and I weigh that very importantly, which I think is how people should do this. So if you're going to get an arranged marriage, I don't know if anyone who listens to this is about to get an arranged marriage, but really try to get to know the person, because, dude, life is long. There's a long life ahead. And if you marry the wrong person and you got 80 years left with this person, that's probably worse than hell. Like, you get to hell and you're like, dude, it's not that bad. I was living with my wife for 80 years. This seems like a day off. So I think it's very important, and I think that's why psychology and just understanding things and just kind of the lessons I've learned from chess on really just understanding what's going on, why this is happening, how I can be good, how I can get better. And I think just getting better at everything is a very important skill. And okay, I promise this is the last thing that I close on. If you want to get better at anything, if you want to get better at marriage, at dating, at chess, at boxing, at school, at business, be curiosity driven. If your number one goal is like, I love this, I want to get better, I love this, I want to learn how to do this better, then I think you will find a way to get better because you love what you're doing, you're curious about it. So that is how I'm going to close this episode. I'm rooting for Adesanya this weekend. Georgia State champion 2023. Very blessed. Thank God for everything. And thank you guys for listening. I will see you guys later.